evening, everyone. Mic check, video check. Am I on?
I can hear you. Happy New Year. Good evening and welcome to the 2021 First City of Pasco Council meeting. The council thanks you for being part of our city government. At regular meetings, the city council takes formal actions on items, holds public hearings, and conducts other business of the city. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the city council meetings continue to be held remotely and may be accessed through GoToWebinar. This meeting is being also televised live on Pasco TV, channel 191, on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and also streamed on the city's Facebook page, its website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Through proclamation number 20-28, Governor Inslee extended the directive making temporary changes to the Open Public Meetings Act. These virtual meetings will continue until the OPMA restrictions are lifted. And lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions for items not on the agenda by contacting the city manager or city clerk or using the feedback form on the city's website. So with housekeeping issues out of the way, again, welcome to our first 2021 City Council meeting, and I would ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And we actually stepped a little out of line, but we will go ahead and go with the roll call, please.
Councilmember Alvarado.
Present.
Maloney.
Present.
Milne.
Present.
Roach.
Present.
Serrano.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Present.
And Mayor Martinez.
Present. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting and being here, as you always have, and thank you for your dedication, and hope for a great year. Next, we'll move on to item number 3 on the consent agenda. Consent agenda, all items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by a roll call vote as one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If there's further discussion to be desired by the council or the public, the item may be removed from the consent agenda to the regular agenda considered separately. So first on the consent agenda is the approval of meeting minutes of the Pasco City Council remote meeting held on December 7th, 2020. Item B, to approve claims in a total amount of $7,451,712.37. And with that, those are the 2 items on the consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, would you like to make a motion? Or if anybody has any other questions or discussions on the agenda, on the consent agenda, let me know. If not, then I would entertain a motion.
Okay, no comments. I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve the consent agenda as read. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Serrano.
Nope. Mr. Councilmember Serrano with a second. Can we have a roll call vote for that, please?
Councilmember Serrano.
Yes.
Alvarado.
Yes.
Maloney.
Yes.
Milne.
Yes.
Roach.
Yes.
Barajas.
Yes.
And Martinez.
Yes. So the consent agenda passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Next, we'll go to the next item, proclamations and acknowledgements, and we have none listed tonight. And next, we'll go to the reports from committees and or officers. Verbal reports from council members. It's been a nice little break for some of us, for most of us. Much needed, and I hope everyone's rested. But is there anybody from the council that would like to share some thoughts or some activities that they have attended?
I have one. This is Councilmember Roach, and this is in regards to Hanford Communities Board. Got an email from the executive director today. Pretty enthusiastic news about the DOE report in reclassifying Hanford waste. And so after a 2-year report, the hope was to get the reclassification, not to say what the origin of the waste was, but of its physical characteristic. And so, I mean, I guess to summarize it for those that may not know, that means that that's money saved in, an amount that I can't even imagine. 73 billion to 230 million, possibly, as well as 10 years off of, the amount of time it would take to dispose of. And so really significant report that just came out from DOE. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roach. Anyone else? If not, and I'll just share real quickly that over the break, I did attend multiple meetings with our co-op and just continue to get information on where we are with the pandemic and continual communication with our representatives from the state. Also held several meetings with our manager, Dave Zabel, and others with our legislators to discuss our legislative priorities and just to introduce ourselves to the new members that have been elected to these positions, and again advocating for our city to ensure that we'll be well representative. Brianna and Holly are doing a wonderful job and making sure our voices are heard. So I'd like to just shout out to them on the great work that they're doing, and it's been very productive meetings. So that's some of the things that I was working on over the break. If there's no one else, I would go ahead and go to the next item on our agenda, and that's hearings and council actions on ordinances and resolutions relating thereto, none listed. Ordinances and resolutions not relating to hearings. And the first item on the agenda will be to talk about the ordinance Story Family Rezone RS-20 to R1. And I see Mr. Director Rick White. Are you on the line tonight?
I am, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and council.
Thank you.
This item is a rezone from the RS-20 district, which it's currently zoned, to R1. It's located on the east side of Road 96. It's just south of the Franklin County Irrigation District Canal, and it encompasses roughly 6.5 acres. Of course, the rezone is proposed to facilitate a future application for a residential subdivision. The Pasco hearing examiner conducted a public hearing on this proposed rezone in December, actually December 9th, and has forwarded a recommendation of approval to City Council.
Thank you, Mr. White. Does any one of the council members have any questions or comments they'd like to ask Director White on this ordinance? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
Okay, I move to adopt ordinance number 4513, rezoning a parcel located at 4011 Road 96 from RS-20 to R1, and further authorize publication by summary only.
Thank you. So there's a motion to adopt ordinance number 4513. Do I hear a second?
This Councilman Milne, I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Milne. So all those in favor to adopt ordinance number 4513 signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Right, next on the agenda is the ordinance, repeal and replace ordinance number 4331. Director White, do you have a presentation?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This is a little different. It involves property that's on the north side of Burns Road, roughly a quarter mile east of Broadmoor Boulevard. It was annexed in 2017, and the zoning determination by City Council followed the Planning Commission recommendation of RS1 for the northern portion of the property and R1 for the southern portion of the property. However, the ordinance that council adopted contained an error in the legal description. This was staff's error, and the zoning was established for RS1 for the entire site. The applicants have applied for a preliminary plat approval. And at that time, just recently here in the last couple of weeks, the error was discovered. The proposed ordinance 4331A corrects that legal description and establishes zoning, which was in line with the Planning Commission recommendation back in late 2016.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Director White. Is there any questions or comments for staff?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Director White, was there any impact on the actual development itself, or is this just an administrative error that we're correcting right now?
No, Mr. Maloney, that's correct. It's an administrative error, and actually the applicants relying on that incorrect legal description applied for a rezone to R1, but essentially it was, of course, muted. So yes, administrative.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Anyone else? If not, then I would entertain a motion.
Absolutely, Mayor. I move to repeal ordinance number 4331 and adopt ordinance number 4331A to correct the legal description of the RS1 and R1 zoning districts for a parcel of land located north of Burns Road and west of Broadmoor Boulevard, and further authorize publication by summary only.
Thank you, Councilwoman Barajas. So I hear a motion to repeal ordinance number 4331 and adopt ordinance number 4331A. Do I hear a second?
This is Councilmember Roach, and I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Roach. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. Thank you. And I am kind of surprised that Councilmember Maloney, you didn't catch that, but I'll forgive you this time.
I think that might have been our first meeting.
I think that was before our time.
Okay, so next we'll go on to item C, the resolution, communication state license, or excuse me, communication site license agreement with AT&T Water Tower. And Mr. Director Steve Orley, do you have a presentation tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Happy New Year, and can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you just fine, thank you.
Great. This evening, we are bringing before council the agreement that council has already seen once. We brought this to council and they approved it on November 15th. It wasn't too long ago. This is about a communication site license agreement with AT&T for some antennas on one of our water towers. The last time we brought it to council, there were still a few items that were under negotiations, and those have been finalized. In your agenda report, we've identified all the different areas that are different from what was previously approved to what is in this revised agreement. This agreement has been reviewed by the consultant that the city hires to work on the city's behalf in negotiating these agreements for the city, and they have been reviewed by the legal counsel as well. And so these changes are to the benefit of both parties. And so unless anybody has any specific questions, I won't bore you with going through each item that's been revised, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Thank you, Director Worley. Staff, or excuse me, council, do you have any questions or comments? I do remember having these conversations and ensuring that we were it was market based on the agreement, and I don't remember there being any objections other than the revisions that were made. So with that, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, would you like to make a motion?
Absolutely, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 4022 for the revised communication site license agreement with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC, AT&T, and further authorize the city manager to execute the revised agreement.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve resolution number 4022. Do I hear a second?
Councilmember Alvarado, I'll second.
It's seconded by Councilmember Alvarado. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. Thank you. Item D, resolution to accept work, City Hall remodel phase 2. Director Zach Ratify, do you have a presentation tonight?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of City Council. Good evening, Zach Ratify, Administrative and Community Services Director. On January 7th, 2019, the City Council approved a project bid and authorized the city manager to sign a contract with Booth & Sons Construction in the amount of $1,170,000 for the second phase of the City Hall renovation project. Subsequent to that, on September 9th, 2019, an additional $500,000 was appropriated and approved through council. This was requested to cover additional measures for the renovation project, such as security upgrades and minor additions that weren't considered in the original design, as well as for furniture, fixtures, and equipment to accommodate changes in staff layout and future growth. So we've reached the point where we are pretty much done with the renovation and with the contract with Booth & Sons Construction, our general contractor. The final payment to the contractor totaled $1,359,701.29. $65,622.65 was held as retainage. Additional payments that went beyond the original contracted amount were funded through the supplemental appropriation of money on September 9th, 2019. The project, as bid and amended, is now complete, and the materials and workmanship meets the standards and specifications for the city of Pasco. Formal acceptance through resolution is required through the revised Code of Washington and initiates a 45-day period of protest for the contractor. And with that, staff recommends approval of the proposed resolution accepting work performed by Booth & Sons Construction for the City Hall remodel project phase 2. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director Radke. And it looks it looks good, but any questions or comments from council?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, Councilmember
Don't have
Alvarado.
too huge of an issue with it, other than it'd probably be good to have perhaps a one-pager with some pictures, since we're not there, are not able to see it. We trust that the staff, has obviously it's a building that you will inhabit and you have signed off on all that. But I think for having the authority to approve or this work, then it'd be good to have perhaps some pictures.
Certainly, we can provide that to council.
All right, we'll trust that you get that to us in an email. Thank you for that, Councilmember Alvarado. Anybody else? If not, I would entertain a motion, please.
Absolutely, Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 4023, accepting work performed by Booth & Sons LLC for the City Hall remodel project phase 2.
Thank you. So there's a motion on the floor to approve resolution number 4023. Do I hear a second?
Councilmember Maloney, I'll second that.
It's seconded by Councilmember Maloney. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next we go to item E, and this is a resolution to ratify emergency orders related to COVID-19. City Manager Dave Zabel, do you have a report for that?
Good evening and Happy New Year, Mayor and Council. This relates to two different emergency resolutions, or emergency orders, both of which in an earlier version were approved by council. They expired at the end of the year, requiring, in order to continue them, requiring the mayor to sign an emergency order, and for them to remain in effect requires that they be presented to council at the first regular meeting after the emergency order was signed, which is this meeting, and for council to take action approving. So the first one, 4024, relates to the use of paid administrative leave for staff. And this basically allows us a little bit of time, and we've had this conversation before, but a little bit of time to kind of sort out what leave is most appropriate for a particular case. As council's aware, there's a lot of different options. There's a little bit fewer now because the federal, some of the federal leaves have got mandates have gone away, but there's still a number of options that an employee can take, and this gives us a little bit of time to kind of work with that with the employee. Second one, ordinance 4025, or excuse me, resolution 4025, relates to extending temporary change in leave policies. Primary one being the ability for an employee to go 80 hours negative on an administrative leave that would be eventually be paid back through future accruals. And we have a number of employees that, you know, perhaps are new to the city, haven't had the time and service to be able to establish and build up their leave banks, or they may have, leave banks may have been depleted for another reason. This gives them a little bit of wiggle room and some flexibility to deal with a COVID-related issue relating to their own health, health of a family member, or school closure related to the pandemic. Both these emergency orders not only needed to be extended, another item that are in both revisions is that they are now geared to expire with the underlying emergency order and resolution establishing the emergency for the city. So you won't have to see these again. They'll just ride with the emergency order and expire at that point in time. Or, excuse me, the state of emergency and expire at that point in time. So with that, staff would recommend approval, two separate motions, two separate votes. And with that, I'm able to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, City Manager Dave Zabel. Council, any questions for Mr. Zabel? I know that we have a community member who has called in and asked to speak on this topic. Miss Eileen Crawford, are you on the line tonight?
Yes, I am on the line, but the items I wanted to address are C,
Okay.
resuming partial in-person public meetings, and 11 miscellaneous.
Okay. I have,
Okay.
that is fine, and we can wait till that time. I just have you here as item 8E, so I wanted to make sure I didn't miss you. But I'll, thank you for that, and I'll just, I'll bring you back for those items when we get there, okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm also gonna ask, there's somebody that has a speaker, that has the mic on and is creating a lot of feedback. If you could mute your mic unless you would like to say something, I would appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so let's see where we are. We're with any comments or questions for this resolution. If there is none, then I would ask Mayor Pro Tem Barajas to go ahead and entertain the motions. One at a time, please.
Yes, sir. The first motion, I move to approve resolution number 4024, ratifying emergency order number 2020-004.2 relating to extending temporary expansion of the administrative paid leave for City of Pasco staff.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve resolution number 4024. Do I hear a second?
This is Councilman Milne. I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Councilmember Milne. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. And the next motion, Mayor Pro Tem.
Absolutely. I move to approve resolution number 4025, ratifying emergency order number 2020-005.3, relating to extending temporary change in leave of policies.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. And there's a motion to approve resolution number 4025. Do I hear a second?
This is Councilmember Roach, and I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Roach, for a second. So all those in favor of approving resolution number 4025 signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, passes unanimously. Well, thank you. And next, we'll
Mr.
go.
Mayor, may I interrupt for just a moment?
Yes, go ahead, Councilwoman Roach.
I am having some connectivity issues, and so if you lose me for a moment, I am going to try to get right back on. So just wanted to let you know of that.
All right, thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
Thanks.
So next item is unfinished business, and there's none listed. We have item 10, new business, and we'll start with the DPDA funding agreement extension. Director White, do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. This council issue is to request an extension of the DPA funding agreement between the city and the DPDA through the first quarter of 2021. The extension would allow first quarter funding to proceed as currently negotiated, which is $25,000 per quarter. And the DPDA actually next week will provide City Council with a annual report, which is specified in the 2020 funding agreement, and a proposed work plan for 2021. Assuming council concurrence or revisions to the proposed work plan, a funding agreement for next year will be brought forward for council consideration before the end of the first quarter this year.
Thank you, Director White. And any questions or comments from council? Well, I know that we've always been very supportive of this organization and looking forward to their report next week. So with that, let's see, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, would you like to entertain the motion, please?
Absolutely, Mayor. I move to extend the 20 Downtown Pasco Development Authority funding agreement through March of 2021.
Thank you. So there's been a motion to extend the 2020 Downtown Pasco Development Authority funding agreement through March of 2021. Do I hear a second?
Serrano, I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilmember Serrano. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is an exciting one for me personally, and I think it is for the other council members as well, because this is something we've been working on for a while. It's the bid award from the Chapel Hill Park construction. Director Ratify, would you like to give us a report on this?
Yes, once again, good evening, Mayor, members of council. So with the construction of the Chapel Hill neighborhood south of I-182 and east of Road 68, the city of Pasco was deeded 5 acres for a neighborhood park site. The surrounding neighborhood would be well served by a park of this size, and since there's a significant number of multifamily units in the vicinity, staff historically through this project since 2017 took careful care in addressing specific needs for that neighborhood. In November of 2017, staff conducted a survey and a neighborhood meeting to solicit input on desired features for the community. From this, a concept plan was developed, and then in 2019 and 2020, this was the time period for the specific design for the park. The 5-acre park, as designed and bid, will include an open play field, picnic areas, basketball court, walking path, and community garden space. Play equipment will be bid separately, as recreation staff is securing a grant to offset the costs of the play equipment, As well, all trees and shrubs will be planted through a community building effort in as part of the 2021 Arbor Day celebration. Our thoughts as staff is that this would elicit ownership in the park by the surrounding community and be a great community building event, provided that gathering restrictions will allow us to conduct this in person. As specified in the call for bids, bids for the project were opened on December 14th, 2020. The city received a total of 5 bids. The lowest responsive bid was submitted by Total Site Services in the amount of $728,006.05. That includes Washington State sales tax. The low bid is slightly more than the construction estimate, but is within the project budget. The bidder has demonstrated the ability to meet the bid specifications, including experience on similar public projects in terms of scope and size. The construction of this project realizes a long-term planned parks improvement project. It's been part of the capital improvements plan for a number of years. It furthers the City Council's commitment to quality of life and financial stewardship goals. Staff recommends acceptance of the bid and award of the Chapel Hill Neighborhood Park Project to Total Site Services as bid. Also a note before I turn it over for questions, this funding for the project is through Park Development Fund, for this district, which was culminated by the collection of park impact fees on building permits that have already been collected and secured. With that, I'll take any questions of council.
Thank you, Director Ratify. And yes, and just in case you didn't mention it or somebody missed it, neighborhood parks such as these are normally constructed after 70% of the homes have been completed and the majority of the park impact fees have been paid. And I know that there's been a lot of community members that have been actively involved as we had meetings to put together what we wanted in this park, and have been very patient. And that's why there's a lot of excitement for me when I see something like this actually come to fruition, because it's something that the whole community has been a part of. So with that, any other council members have any comments or questions?
Yeah, this is Serrano. I just want to clarify, Director Ratify. You're indicating that these funds have been collected, and is that in a sufficient amount to cover that 728 change?
Yes, that is correct, Councilman.
Okay. I thought I had understood that. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Anybody else? Well, I wasn't the only one. I know there was other council members there at the meetings when we were proposing the different types of things that they wanted at the parks, and remember there being children giving their opinion, and that was just one of the very rewarding things that we get to experience when everybody comes together and this comes to fruition. So once again, thank you for that. So Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, would you like to entertain a motion?
Absolutely, Mayor. I move to award the bid for construction of Chapel Hill Park to Total Site Services in the amount of $728,006.05, including Washington State sales tax, and further authorize the city manager to execute the contract documents.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to award the bid for construction of Chapel Hill Park. Do I hear a second?
Yeah, this is Councilman Milne. I'll second that.
And a second.
Glad to see this.
Thank you, Councilmember Milne. Seconded by Councilmember Milne. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. It passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, now we come to an interesting topic of the option to resume partial in-person public meetings. And we have a report from our Director, Adam Lincoln, City Manager, or Deputy City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. Before you tonight is a little bit of information regarding the Governor's Proclamation 20-28-.14, which was released on the 7th of December. And in it, it allows for the City Council to meet in person should they desire, with some caveats, including smaller occupancy of the council chambers, social distancing, mask wearing, and ensuring that proper PP&E is available, including hand sanitizer for people who may attend in person. It also requires that there be an overflow space for those who wish to attend in person, but who would not fit in the 15 chairs that are in the council chambers currently. The details are included in the governor's proclamation that has been amended now 14 times. But basically, we just would like to get your feedback this evening on whether or not this is something that the city council would like to entertain as an option for future council meetings. I'm not sure if there's anything that City Manager Zabel would like to add to that.
Mr. Zabel, would you like to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. I think that pretty well touches it. I know I've personally heard from a number of council members regarding some of the difficulties as well with virtual attendance at these meetings, as well as I've heard from members of the public. This does give us an option, as the Deputy City Manager mentioned. It doesn't negate our responsibility to continue with the virtual format, but it does give us an option to have some public here and for some or all of council as they wish to attend.
Thank you, City Manager Zabel, and thank you, Deputy City Manager Adam Lincoln. Council, would you like to comment on this question before I ask for some community members that have asked to speak on this? So why don't we go ahead and start with Eileen Crawford. I believe this is one of the items that she wanted to speak on. Are you with us again, Mrs. Crawford?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I would like to implore the council to please open up the meetings as much as possible to the public. It's going to be a long road to revitalize Pasco and our small businesses upon which we are reliant. And part of revitalization is pulling them back in and getting them involved again. And they need to feel like they're a part of Pasco, because this whole stay home, stay safe, lock up, be home, it really alienates people. And right now, our businesses, they're starving. We need to pull them back in, and you need to show your face. And we need to make it real again, not just a computer screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Crawford. I appreciate your comments, and I'm sure the sentiments go throughout the council. Another community member that wanted to speak on this item was Justin Carey. Are you on the line, Mr. Carey?
He is not listed as or not showing up as an attendee to the meeting,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
All right. How about James Dewey? Are you on the line tonight?
Mr. Dewey is not showing up on the attendees as well.
Okay. I hope that they're seeing it online anyway, and hopefully they can fix the whatever IT functions that are not allowing them to get on tonight. We have a Steve Simmons. Are you is he on, Director Rector?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just am. He's on and live.
Mr. Simmons, are you on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, and thank you for coming online tonight. Do you have a comment on item 10C?
Yeah, if you don't, I just had something I wanted to say real briefly, if that's okay.
I'm sorry, if you want to just maybe, it sounds like you might be too close to the mic.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay, I'll just keep my comments real brief. I just wanted to express my support for resuming of in-person meetings. Partial attendance if we must, but full attendance is the goal. Although the governor's proclamations have amended the RCWs, especially those in 42.30, these amendments are just temporary. And as the so-called public disaster drags on, I feel that the consequence of these mandates are becoming far worse than the problems they were supposedly meant to prevent. So, in my opinion, it's up to the citizens to stand up and support efforts to restore our laws as written in our state's constitution, including in-person access to meetings. item. Okay.
Oh, okay.
RCW 40, I'm almost done, hold on. So RCW 40.30.10 says, and I quote, "The people of the state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people in delegating authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments that they have created." You know, one of my favorite authors was David McCullough, and he said, and I quote, "Never assume that people in positions of responsibility are behaving responsibly." So I'm not saying that our current elected officials are irresponsible, but it is a goal of the RCW that citizens hold our elected officials accountable. Meetings with the public present are critical and work towards these goals. And I just want to say, please support any efforts to restore a public presence at City Council.
Okay. Was the council able to get most of that? Councilmember Maloney, did you get most of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So thank you for that, Mr. Simmons. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Horrible.
Yeah, this is Councilmember Maloney. I'm happy to go first. I'm sure a number of council members have something to say, so I'll get the ball rolling if that's okay with you, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
Thank you. So I'm supportive of us seeing what we can do to resume in-person meetings. I mean, I do think one of the key functions of what we do as a city council is listening, and as we saw by two folks who wanted to speak up tonight and were unable to make the technology work, this just doesn't work well for everyone. It's a struggle. The key being that this has to be done safely and compliant with the order. I'm interested in seeing a little more of a detailed plan than we have in front of us right now as to how we're going to maintain that. For example, I believe many agencies, when they were looking at reopening, when businesses were reopening over the summer and such, there was temperature checks. I don't know if that's necessary or prudent in this case for people entering the chambers. How are we going to enforce the set of rules that are in front of us? I just want to understand a little better how we're going to approach some of those key items before I'm willing to vote on this. But I am very much supportive of us moving forward and trying to make this work so we can get back in person.
Sure thing, Councilmember Maloney. City Manager Zabel, do you have any comments on what, or presented something that could that has more details as the Councilmember Maloney described?
Yes, we could. Matter of fact, I did have a discussion earlier today with Councilmember Maloney about some of those items, and we will be putting something together for full council to consider next week.
Okay.
So I don't want to necessarily do it off the cuff. The temperature check thing is something I would really want to discuss with legal.
Okay. All right, and which reminds me, I didn't mention it like I have every other meeting since we've been in this situation, but we do have the disinfectant for hands, our masks, and sanitize this area. And before I make my final comments, is there anybody else that would like to mention anything tonight on this topic?
Yeah, I'd like to speak. I am absolutely in favor of this. I think Councilmember Maloney pointed out two issues that we had tonight that really highlight the struggle that we've had. Councilwoman Roach, it sounds like you had to jump off and came back. And we're doing our best, and I appreciate that we're doing this, but I would like to resume meeting in person as soon as possible. The governor's given at least the base levels, hand sanitizers, masks, capacities. I don't think we need to do anything other than decide to meet in person. I, for one, will start meeting in person. It's time. We need to do this. I need to do this for my ability to represent people that we represent. I don't feel they're getting the fair representation from us. And we are fortunate that most of our residents, most of our constituents have internet. Not all do. not all have the technology to make this work. So we are leaving a portion of our community out. And that was probably more so true until about, I think, like 6 weeks ago when the libraries became open. You know, until then we had certain individuals who had no access online. So the only option would be to go knock on the door and give it a Post-it. And that's obviously not feasible. So I think we need to me, this one should be, I don't think it needs to be mandatory. For council members that may not feel comfortable, that may have compromised issues, immunities, delicate health situations, you know, please stay home, especially if you're sick. But I do think we need to resume meeting in person as soon as possible. Utilizing the minimum standards from week one and developing a more robust protocol that, to city manager's point, legal's vetted, make sure that we're not infringing on anyone's rights. You know, obviously the mask mandate's going to be a question if someone presents a health concern, you know, a health waiver, what we're going to do there. So I think there are a lot of things to think through, but I think at a minimum, council and some members could resume this. I would like to resume as soon as next week myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Anyone else?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, Councilmember Alvarado. And then after you, it'll be Councilmember Milne.
All right, Councilmember Milne. Yes, I think one of the things that I've observed is certainly a need for being able to have people come and speak to council. That's certainly a very important part of the role we do. I also see the opportunity, I think, that it has been presented of being able to have people who may not have the ability to come in person to be able to call in. It's challenging, but if I think forward-looking, even post-COVID, to still have that option for our residents, I think would be really good. And so I'd like to be able to explore how we could do a hybrid of that so that post-COVID, we can even have that option for folks. And so I think that, you know, that's something that I think is important.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. Councilmember Milne.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Also, I wanted to echo Serrano and Maloney's comments. But I also think that when I got elected, I made a point telling people whether they liked me or didn't like me, I'd always meet them face to face, look them in the eye, and at least address them. And not being there at the council chambers, not being able to interact with people versus just on the phone, it's very frustrating for myself. And then, of course, the issues that I've had in the past with the whole different Zoom aspects. So as soon as possible, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get back in the council chambers and be more active with my constituents and community. And again, the sooner the better is my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Milne.
Mr. Mayor, one of the public comments, Mr. James Dewey is arrived and able to speak when you get a chance.
Okay, so, well, why don't we go to him, and then if there's anyone else, we'll finish up with the council. So, Mr. James Dewey, are you on the line tonight? I don't know if you're, you might be muted, Mr. Dewey? Okay. Okay, Mr. Dewey, are you there? And this is exactly what we're talking about. Give it one more second, an opportunity for Mr. Dewey to come online.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, this is John Funfar. Mr. Dewey, it appears that you are self-muted, so if there's any way you can unmute yourself, you'd be online, please.
All right, we get it?
Oh, there we go. I can hear you now, Mr. Dewey.
All right, thank you, council, for being patient, for someone, obviously, as you guys have spoke about, not being too tech savvy. Yes, I wanted to chime in as well, please, in regards to allowing citizens of Pasco to come in there and speak with you personally, as some of the council had set up to this point. The ability to look your constituents in the eye and make your point as far as a councilman, and to let us know where it is that you stand, even if it is in disagreement, would be greatly appreciated. And I think that it's owed to us, the citizens of Pasco, to see and hear both ways, from you hearing from us and us hearing from you regarding any of the major subjects that we talk about, let alone the predicament that we are in as a city. So please consider opening it up. There are very many controls that we could put in place as far as distancing, and to make those who are fearful about being in person. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater in regards to allowing those who would take the time and opportunity to come in to speak to you in person, please. Please take that in consideration. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling in and sharing that with us tonight, Mr. Dewey. And then we'll...
Mayor, I have a comment, just a quick comment.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, go ahead.
I'd just like to speak on behalf of this opening up. I'm glad we heard from people in the community. We can definitely see how everyone is struggling. Most everyone is struggling to log in. And you're right, Councilmember Milne, we need to represent our community properly. And so I'm just interested in hearing what the protocols will be once we are back in the office, or whoever does show up back at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else?
This is Councilmember Roach, and I just have a couple comments, which is to say that I'm in agreement with my fellow council members with what's been shared. I have had my personal struggles, not just with technology as tonight. My agenda packet, each item opened except for 10A and B, or, you know, for whatever reason, not sure, but everything else opened up just fine. But that we also consider for those people who may not make it in person and want to still connect with us virtually. I've gotten feedback from the community that, you know, the disembodied voice that we hear is not really, you know, as it's not a whole experience of that person, what they need to emote as they talk about, you know, their item that they're talking about. And so if they do have for whatever health reason, they want to stay home and connect with us virtually, if we can also provide the possibility of having them attend via video, not just phone. That's one thing that I'd like to say. And definitely I am in favor of just seeing a reopening kind of plan, wanting to know what, you know, we have a population of people who don't believe that masks are effective. And so how would staff, for example, handle somebody who came in and did not want to wear a mask? So that's the question I have for staff. And then, you know, we need to model the way. That's what I'd like to say, is that I believe we can do this. We can be in person and do it safely and model the way for the rest of our community. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roach. Staff, any response?
Well, the protocols, I think there's a pretty detailed list in the agenda report. And what I've heard outstanding, and Councilmember Roach just mentioned it, one, compliance. And what are going to be the protocols associated with compliance? I can't answer that tonight. You know, we'd be requiring anyone coming in here to wear a mask. If they refuse to comply with that, we would ask them to leave. And then beyond that, I need to have a discussion as to with legal and other key staff and how do we support that. Okay. So we will come back next week with that, as well as some discussion on other entry requirements. Specifically, the other item was brought up tonight was temperature check. So we'll bring some information back on both those for council to consider. I understand that council, you know, wishes to act on this as quickly as they can, and so I would suggest that we would probably do it as a special meeting item next week. rather than wait the 2 weeks.
Perfect.
So.
And the option to have it online as well is that's
That's a requirement
That's
under
a
the,
requirement.
under
Okay,
the
good.
governor's modified order.
perfect. All right, well, with that said, I mean, I appreciate the council's comments and also the community's comments and the importance of us being together. I will tell you that many, many times I had issues with the team meetings and struggling, and there was a couple of meetings where, you know, I had to go out and come back for executive session, and I appreciate and don't take for granted the fact that I've been able to be here, but it is very important that we're here in person representing and allowing people to come in. There's no reason in my mind that we cannot be as safe or safer than what it would be to go to any other store that's open or hardware store that's open and ensure that we maintain our distance. We can go as far as, we'll learn a little bit more by next week on the temperature checks, which is a little like one step above, but there's no reason why we can't be that example, Councilmember Roach. And I've always tried to make that attempt. I can't tell you that I've been perfect like anyone else, but there's no reason why we can't make this a possibility to keep it safe and to represent our community the way we should and slowly bring things back to normal. I appreciate the comments from Eileen Crawford in this long haul that we have to come back to some type of normalcy, but we can do it, and we're gonna do it. We have to do it. We have to be successful, and this is a start. So with that, I appreciate council to work hard to make sure we get that so we can put it on as a special item next week and we can vote on it, because I know that all of us are in agreement with this and we'll make it work one way or the other. So thank you very much for that. And I don't think I missed anybody that wanted to say anything as far as this goes for item 10C. So with that, we're going to move on to item 11, miscellaneous discussion. And this topic has brought a lot of emotions and excitement. And do you want to kick it off, Mr. Zabel, just to?
Well, thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Council. So this item's under miscellaneous discussion because it is being presented by a council member as a suggestion or information that council member wanted to share with the city council. It is not anything at this point that has been vetted by city legal or has a recommendation by city staff. So I want the public to be clear on that. And this was simply a council member, rather than dropping a topic on a matter on a policy matter during miscellaneous verbally. He had a desire to be able to share some written information with council prior to the meeting so the council would have an opportunity to see it and be in a position to have some discussion on it tonight as part of this meeting. And from that, I would anticipate council will have some direction as to where they would want to take this issue if they want to take it further. I don't know that it's appropriate for me necessarily to go into what the Councilmember Serrano's proposal is. I think, Mayor, it's probably most appropriate to turn it over to Mr. Serrano, or Councilmember Serrano at this point.
Thank you, City Manager Zabel. So with that said, since Councilmember Pete Serrano has brought this to our attention, and again, it was nothing more than a topic to discuss and to, I won't elaborate anymore. I'll let Councilmember Serrano, you want to go ahead and kick it off?
Yeah, I greatly appreciate that, Mayor and City Manager Zabel. Thank you, Council, for indulging me in this discussion tonight. I recognize that this is quite a sensitive topic with a lot of very polarized thoughts and feelings in it. Nonetheless, after quite some time, I spent a lot of my free time while we were away from council involved with various constituents, in particular business owners, as well as our local state representatives, who we discussed what's the path forward look like in 2021. We're rather than getting back to a new normal, getting back to, you know, a lifestyle where everyone is treated equitably, that we don't have different industries that are deemed essential and non-essential, but we have industries where individuals can go make a living and actually make a living rather than be told, no, you can't open, no, you can't do this. And so after a lot of thought, after a lot of discussion with those individuals, and several meetings and many hours, we worked up a draft ordinance. I recognize it's not perfect. I mean, I recognize that the thought is that we're going to have a discussion tonight. If I had my way, we would have a vote on this tonight. But I recognize that may not happen by council. But I do think that we need to do something to demonstrate to our constituents that we're standing for them. You know, we've written several letters. I've written some on my own. The mayors of the Tri-Cities have written some, and yet we're not getting anywhere with the governor. So I think that at a minimum, this ordinance shows our constituents that we are fighting for them. We're willing to say, hey, we want to empower you to make a livelihood. We don't want you to do this in some ridiculous manner to flaunt it or what have you. But we as a city, through the DPDA, as well as the Tri-City Chambers and various chambers of commerce, have expended funds for these businesses to reopen. I recall seeing the pictures down, I think, at Peanuts Park of giving away PPE and plexiglass for safe reopening. So it seems to me that if we utilize these CARES Act funds and other monies to assist certain businesses that are being told they cannot reopen in reopening safely, why is it that they're being treated disparately or disproportionately affected? I'm seeking some type of equitable relief for these businesses, and they've sought me out to assist them in finding that. And I don't think there's a need to comb through the ordinance itself. I'm certainly glad to walk through it, but it's in front of everyone, and I suspect that the public who has comments and who has commented via email and other such means has already read it. So I don't think I'm happy to walk through it if that's what the council prefers, but again, it's in front of us. So with that, you know, I wholeheartedly endorse this. I would love to vote on it and pass it or figure out what the right size is tonight. So that would be my request to council, but I recognize that I'm one of 7.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano, and I sure appreciate that. But before we move forward on other council members' comments, I guess I would just like to make it known, this is something that, as you have described, you have talked to some of your constituents, and the fact that this proposed ordinance, this was just something that was brought up and developed by you with the best intentions to bring up to try to help our community, but not to pinpoint and not to put anybody on the spot. This was simply a door to open for discussion, to get us to talk about how we can perhaps do things better for our community. Is that a correct statement, or?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, what we did is I baked the template out that, we baked the template out. I don't want to take credit for this. This is a kind of a community collaborative effort. As we baked this template out, I tried to right size it to Pasco so that we could, you know, cut and paste and bring it forward. But to Mr. Zabel's point, it hasn't been vetted by legal. Again, in Pete Serrano's dream world, this is perfect. We pass it. We're good. You know, clap hands. We're happy. I recognize my dream world doesn't exist. It's a dream. So tonight, obviously, we're going to have our discussion. If we could discuss it and tailor it into a way that we could move forward or move forward pending legal review. I don't know what the process is. I recognize this is outside of the process. But again, in my dream world, we'd say, you know, find a way to get all of our residents able to get back to work tomorrow and not deem individuals non-essential, because that's an extremely inequitable term for any individual, in particular those who are already struggling.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. And I just wanted to be clear to the community that, you know, as the mayor of City of Pasco and as a person who resides over meetings, we give each and every council member the equal opportunity to bring up topics and to bring up conversation on what we can do to better our community. And this is just one of those things that this is the first step. And I know, if I know Mr. Serrano, and I think you would agree with me, that the intentions were not to pinpoint any commission or organization, but just to simply bring it to council, and then as a body, we would make that determination. And I just wanted to make that clear to the community, because everybody has a right, every one of these council members have a right to speak their mind and in a professional manner. And I know that Councilmember Serrano's intentions here were to do just that. So with that, I would like to open it up for discussion to any other council member and share your thoughts.
Sorry, Mayor, I'm going to piggyback off of one thing you said there. I did forget to mention the Inclusivity, Diversity, and Equity Commission. I intentionally brought them into this for two reasons. Not to pinpoint them, rather, but to highlight them. One, you know, in 2018, it was a very close, narrow vote to bring on that commission. And I was proud of that effort to be part of that. Unfortunately, amongst COVID and shuffling of personnel and a couple of hiccups, I have yet to see a product from the IDEC that I think we could hang our hat on and say this has been a success. So I intentionally wrote them into the ordinance in section 4, and I think quite frankly they could assist also in section 3 and other places. But one of the things we had discussed in that 2018 timeframe was, let's try to provide an assignment to, back then it was the Inclusivity Commission, now it's the IDEC, and give them tangible results, which is to comb through policies and determine where the city hits or misses. And to the extent that there have been COVID implications either through the city or the governor's proclamations, let's utilize their efforts with professional staff, city staff, and city legal counsel to determine whether or not there may be claims that the city could say, hey, we are being treated disparately. We have people who are being treated in violation of their equal rights. And if that's the case under these orders, we need to stand for those people. And I thought that IDEC was ideal. Whether or not they agree, that's fine. We have staff that can do it as well. So I do appreciate you reminding me of that point. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Serrano. And I just wanted to make it a point that this came from one of the council members, and there wasn't any decision or anything made from the commission on which way they would go on this, because this would be just an opportunity before any decision would be made, such as this one, that would include them, that they would have the right to give their opinion. And in this case, I just want to be clear, they didn't have an opportunity to get an opinion. This was, again, a preliminary idea from a council member that is just bringing up to the council for discussion. So I wanted to just be clear on that, and thank you for that, Mr. Serrano. Now, with that, any other council member, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Mr. Mayor, this is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
I believe we had a number of people on the phone that were interested in sharing their opinion. If you don't, if you'd indulge me, I would like to hear from them before we continue our discussion, if that's all right.
Yes, Mr. Maloney, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. And we will start. We do have several people, and I am going to ask, in this case, since it's the community, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 5 or 6 people, to just be as brief as you can, and but share your thoughts, and we're here to hear you. So the first person on the list here is Leo Morales. Are you on the line tonight?
Yes, I'm here.
I think I heard him. Are you there, Mr. Morales?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, I can hear you
here.
just very lightly.
Let me turn this then off. Hold on.
That's a
Hold
little,
on for a second.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. We can hear you now, Mr. Morales.
Okay, thanks.
Would you like to comment on?
Yeah,
this?
I mean, I'm a small business owner, and we are, I mean, the whole lockdown time, I'm going to talk about specifically restaurants. The whole no dining to me and to most of the owners that I know makes no sense though. You can now go to the Pasco airport and jump into an Alaska plane with 300 people and fly for 3-4 hours with no social distance. The only thing they require is a mask, and that's okay. You can go to Costco or you can go to Walmart and go around for 40 minutes an hour to with 1,000 people, and that's okay. But like me, I'm going to talk about I went from 12 tables to 4 tables. My occupancy is 100, and I'm only have 16 seats on my restaurant, but I'm not allowed to sit up. Can somebody explain why the restaurants are being singled out? And if the council can do something about that? I mean, there's a lot of ways that I can open my restaurant safer than going to Costco or to Walmart or to get into a plane for 5 hours with 300 people. I can do it safe. Why am I not allowed to do it? That's my question. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Morales. I understand your frustration, and I hear you. The council hears you. But what I'll do is I'll take your comments, and we'll wait to the end of when everybody had a chance to speak and give the council members a chance to respond to that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, Mr. Morales. Next on the line, we have Justin Carey. Is Justin Carey on?
Mr. Mayor, he is not on the meeting.
Okay. Eileen Crawford, you still there?
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to approach this from several different perspectives. As a precinct committee officer, I have several members in my neighborhood who are small business owners. They're going through hell right now. They need to be able to open. I mean, we're talking about second and third mortgages on their homes to try to maintain and keep their business above water. It's not right. Everybody is essential. As a prior affirmative action officer, I can tell you there are some real problems with the picking of winners and losers. And there is a definite disparate effect, Mr. Serrano, regarding minority businesses, especially in Pasco, and religious activities. Pasco is what, 80-90% small business minority owned? We can't do this to them. And as a consumer, I feel safer in the small grocery stores such as Yolks and Grocery Outlet than I do in Walmart. Walmart is just a pigsty. It's horrible. I would much rather shop and frequent small businesses, small restaurants, than the large stores where, as was noted, thousands of people are going through every day. But you know, I feel real strongly that Mr. Serrano, Councilman Serrano, is on the right course here. We need to do something. We need to stand up for our businesses. They're saying 50% of the small businesses will be closed by the end of the year. That's not right. People invested everything they had into their small businesses. We need to show them that you as a council, we as a city, we're going to stand up for them, and we're going to do the best we can. I understand there is a county in Washington State. The entire county is opened up. They've opened up all their businesses. They're doing it as safe as they can. I do promote safety and public health, but we've got to stand up for these folks. We need to let them all know they're essential. Let them open their doors. Give the consumer the right to say, yes, I feel safe there, or no, I don't. We've got common sense. We can do what is right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Crawford. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Dewey, are you still on the line?
I am.
Okay. You also wanted to speak on this subject?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
I wanted to applaud. All right, thank you. I wanted to applaud Councilman Serrano's attempt to reopen our city and provide a fighting chance to our business owners, workers, and public. I believe that there's plenty of new data out there that would help the council come to a better decision which I intend to send over to each of you as these months have passed and as we've gained more data and more information for you to make an informed decision, which I understand you need to take all aspects into your decision making. But regardless, though, if there are still some of you that are in the mindset that it's your job to protect us from sicknesses, which I believe it is not, if it is your idea that that's the case, I believe that you've overstepped that role regarding protecting the citizens. However, if you may disagree, please make that stance known so that we can hear what it is each of the councilmen believe in regards to protecting us from so-called sicknesses. But I'd ask you to allow the Pasco citizens to determine where they go or who they interact with. Allow Pasco businesses and owners to assume that risk for themselves. There's plenty of controls that are in place. Many of them would jump through any hoop just to allow themselves a chance of surviving in their business for their families and for themselves. Unless that is, you really do think that the council knows what's best for us and or the proclamation made by the governor. Or simply you believe that maybe the citizens of Pasco are inept that we're not able to think for ourselves or for our families. And if either of any of the councilmen do, please speak up and post that reasoning why it is you know what is best for us and our families, let alone what empowers you to do so. I would love to know, and I'd love to make others aware of that if that's the case. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Dewey. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Jeffrey Robinson, are you on the line tonight?
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Oh, yeah, we can hear you, Mr. Robinson.
Good, because you're about to hear quite a bit of me, because I'm not real thrilled with this council right now, and I don't know how else to say it. I have to be honest with you, if there was any possible way this council could have made me question my faith in them, it was this exciting agenda opportunity. Never in my life did I think, as the chair of the IDEC Commission, I would be involved in something without even having the courtesy from members of the council, especially the one that wrote this exciting little memorandum, to at least warn me beforehand or warn the other commissioners. Never once in my life did I think anything that I did for the city could pose a threat to my safety, the safety of my family, or the safety of the other commissioners. Never once did I think it would be more dangerous or controversial to do something for the city as opposed to the political work that I do outside of this. But unfortunately, folks, you've now proven me wrong, and I do congratulate the one in particular that wrote this. No effort was made to let us know that we were being involved in such a controversial issue. None. No effort was made, or it seems any thought was given to the fact that there may be members of the public that will mistake our involvement in something like this with a full-on endorsement of breaking the governor's order. No thought apparently was given how communities of color and marginalized communities in this city would take something like this. I had hoped that I would be able to come up with something eloquent and nice to say to the seven of you, but I don't have nice right now. What I have is a day spent having to hear from people that thought that somehow I was either behind this, or people who somehow got it into their heads that IDEC wants to break the governor's order. We don't. We are an advisory group, and while I absolutely would love to have a conversation and delve into the concept of systemic racism in relation to the economy and the economic impact, and I would love to have people of color drive that narrative to tell us just specifically what they need in our community, it doesn't seem as though we had an opportunity to do that. No, instead what happened is we got shoved into the middle of an extremely hot button issue that has had people, public officials, get harassed at their homes, that has brought out the very worst in this community, and the individual responsible for drafting this couldn't be bothered to at least warn us. In fact, until yesterday, I had no idea this was even going to be discussed. So while I do appreciate Pete Serrano, he is actually someone I consider to be one of my closest friends. Gotta tell you folks, if there was any possible way this council could make me or anyone else that believes in this city start to wonder if their faith was misplaced, boy, the handling of this was sure a jackpot. I am beyond disappointed right now. I am beyond offended that we weren't even asked about this, that this wasn't even brought to my attention as the chair of the IDEC Commission until yesterday. I would have expected better. And to be brutally honest with you, given the record of excellence and outstanding thought that this council is capable of and that they have been doing for what, the last 3 years, especially with some of the newer people on here, it is astonishing to me that I am right now having to have this conversation, especially publicly with the 7 of you. I expect better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Appreciate your comments and apologize for any inconvenience. But I'm going to go ahead and go to the next community member, and then we'll have the discussion when everybody's done giving a comment. So thank you for that, Mr. Robinson. Steve Simmons, is he on the line? Yes. Okay.
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Mr. Simmons. Good evening.
Good evening. So I really don't know how to follow whatever that just was. In fact, that really just angered me as a citizen of Pasco, that's what we have stooped to at that level there, that we had to listen to that, because I think as a citizen of this city, I'm capable of making decisions on my own as to what my safety needs to be, responsible for my family. So I just want to say this real quick. I'm not a business owner, but I'm important as a consumer of goods and services at the local level. And I just want to express my support for Councilmember Serrano's efforts and the draft ordinance to open businesses. Small business is the backbone of all business and the economy. And while many laws have been suspended or modified in the name of a public disaster, it is true that we as a Pasco public are growing tired of seeing the adverse effects of these mandates in our own community, regardless of race or anything. And as many small businesses are forced to remain closed or shuttered, even though they are more important to our local economy and individual families than larger regional and national box chains. It is the city and municipal level that care about the individual, individuals who have worked hard to build legal and legitimate businesses, businesses that provide for the health and heartbeat of our local community. So I just urge the council, when it comes time, please support Councilmember Serrano's efforts and get Pasco open. At the municipal level, we can make a difference.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Appreciate your comments tonight.
Thank you.
Is Phil Warren on the line tonight?
No, not showing, sir.
Okay. If he comes on, will you let me know, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Tara Childs, are you on the phone tonight? Is she on tonight? Yes. Okay. So, are you there, Mrs. Childs?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Just barely. Can you maybe get closer to the mic?
Okay, my name's Tara Childs, and I'm a teacher here in Pasco. Okay. And open businesses mean open schools. And I see that there's big box stores open. I see that there's McDonald's, big companies open. Yet small businesses, small gyms, small restaurants can't be open. Small stores can't be open. They make our economy unique, and they make the people of Pasco. And I support Pete Serrano's initiative along with the other elected officials who've worked hard to open our city and counties. And our economy's falling. Our people are hurting. Please open our businesses. And it can't be soon enough. They've been shut down for 9 months, and change needs to happen now. This is not okay. Enough is enough. Right is right. And this is not right. So I'm pleading for you to open up the businesses for these people in our community who are hurting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Childs. Appreciate your comments tonight. Mr. Michael Miller, are you on the line tonight?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Charles Grimm?
He is on. He would have to unmute himself. There he
Mr.
is.
Grimm.
Thank you. I've now figured out how to unmute myself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council, for considering this important issue. As I wrote to you all this afternoon, I'm a big proponent of subsidiarity, which is government at the most local level possible. I believe the reason that you are council members is that you also believe that we know what is best for Pasco. I'm not going to question the sincerity of Governor Inslee tonight, but I do believe that collectively we know what is best for Pasco. Communities and businesses are beginning to stand up. We've tried the governor's way for nearly a year now. It was a couple of weeks to flatten the curve. Then it was not to overburden the hospitals. Yes, human life is of infinite value, but that doesn't mean we put a stoplight at every intersection, an overpass at every highway interchange, or an interlock breathalyzer on every car's steering wheel. Okay, you know, somebody would say, but we make everybody wear seatbelts. But yeah, people think about that as like the mask to get into the business. We still allow people to drive, and we should allow people to do their businesses also. We allow people to live their lives and mostly go about taking the precautions they deem necessary. This whole American experiment is based on the governance by the people, for the people, a self-governing nation. I urge you to allow your constituents to make their own decisions. If someone doesn't feel safe at a restaurant, I bet they won't go. It's their decision, but let them decide. You know, as it was brought up earlier, you know, you have 174 people that were infected at the Union Gap Costco. They seem to have some of the strongest protocols that any business is using, yet they have that kind of an infection rate. Our state government is simply playing a game of whack-a-mole. A business owner feels desperate enough that they have nothing to lose by carrying on with their business as they always have, and he uses the coercive power of his agencies at his disposal to make an example of them. With the stroke of a pen, my business that employs 25 people here in Pasco could have been deemed non-essential, and I would feel just as desperate as these other businesses fighting for survival. With that said, you guys, my spidey senses do tingle a little thinking about anyone having to show proof of a negative test or a vaccination status, as I believe that is setting a dangerous precedent. At the same time, this is our chance to rise up as a community and stand by the convictions that we know what's best for our community, despite what the governor says. If we rise up together, we will prevail. Our community, like so many others, is hemorrhaging right now. Please approve this action item and stand up for your community. And those were my prepared statements. And if I can just tack on one little thing with the last lady's comment, you know, it made me think about wealth. She was talking about the big box stores. You guys, by us, you know, we want to keep the wealth here, and as much as Pasco, and as much as we just allow these big box stores, these big companies to get all of the business, you guys, that is taking all of that wealth out of our community. As it's been said, we are a community of small businesses. Let's let those, I mean, you guys have seen the memes. Let's close the big box stores and let the small businesses have their chance in phase two. But seriously, you guys, our wealth is leaving this community, and it's not going into families of small business owners that are active in our community, participating in our community, and we're allowing that just to all go to these big box stores and everything. Anyways, thank you for your time, and you have a very contentious issue before you. God bless you in it.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Appreciate your comments as well. I want to give one more opportunity for Justin Carey. Did he come on the line, Director Racke?
No, sir. We do have Michael Miller, though, it looks like.
Oh, Mike Miller, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Mr. Miller, go ahead. You wanted to speak on the topic of this topic?
I did, yeah. My name is Michael Miller, and excuse me, I own Proof Gastropub in Pasco. We signed our lease in March. Bad timing, but super excited to be in Pasco, part of the small business scene, and this year has been rough for us for sure. I guess I just want to speak to the fact that, as some others have said, these big box stores are open. We're allowed to open with a tent with multiple sides. It just doesn't make sense. You know, this has been, again, just a tough year for us. You know, and I know we're not the only ones, but I believe we can open safely. I believe we can. We've shown that we're able to do that, and I just don't think the issues that are kind of transpiring now are due to restaurants. So if there's a way for us to be open, which I think there is, we can do it safely, and it would just mean a lot to us to be able to make this happen. So fully support this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. And that's the last I had on my list. So thank you, Mr. Radke, for the help.
You're welcome.
So there you have it, council. We have different thoughts on this topic. Who would like to be the first to maybe give their comments and respond to the situation?
Yeah, hey, this is Councilman Melmy, and as a small business owner, I can honestly say that it is difficult. Once people start shopping online, whether it's Amazon because you've closed your store down, then they don't usually come back, or it's a lot harder to get customers to come back. So I do understand the challenges, and I'm supportive of again small business opening up. My question actually would be more for Dave Zabel as far as on another issue. What Mr. Serrano was saying was when you have the religious aspect, hasn't the Governor Inslee, hasn't he changed that? I heard on Sunday that he had changed it where instead of telling churches and different religious organizations that they couldn't, it was now just a recommendation. And then if you get at least I have a comment on that. And then also I was curious with the new election with our county commissioners, have we heard anything with their thinking as far as Franklin County? I didn't know if you had any insight to that because I know it's came up on other issues in the last 6 months with the commissioners.
Yeah, as to the religious institutions change that you referenced, I can't really speak to that because we've been pretty much tracking impacts to the city and to the extent where the city has the ability to control it, impacts to our businesses. I honestly can't. I can look into the church issue for you and discuss that with legal, but I can't really answer that with any specificity this evening.
Okay, did you have any comment on the county as Franklin County as a whole? If you guys had any information on that? Or?
Yeah, I've not had any official communication with the the county officials recently. I have had a couple of conversations that could be pertinent, but both those conversations indicate the county is standing on their current position. At this time, I've not heard any movement from the county to change their position. As this council probably recalls, there was an early movement that lasted about 24 hours, 48 hours, early on in the pandemic. After a briefing from the county prosecutor, the county rescinded that action and it's taken a position very consistent with what the city has taken over the past several months, and I've not heard any indications that that's going to change.
Okay, thanks. And I guess another quick question to follow up on that. If we were to do Mr. Serrano's idea, would the city be on any kind of legal fees as far as, like, say, if a company opened up, say, like, for instance, a restaurant, and then the state would say to pull their business license, would the city be the one responsible for that as far as having to pay legal fees, or is that, I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's actually probably a question better answered by our city attorney, who is online with us tonight.
Can you hear me?
Mr. Ferguson, are you on the line tonight?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Just barely.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, there's it's a pretty complicated question. It's not real clear to what degree. I will tell you that that is certainly a huge concern that we have. And while I don't know that there's a black and white answer that we could give you tonight, we certainly would definitely want to make sure that we had that answer before we gave any kind of recommendation, because that could be something that would definitely have a huge impact on what could take place, consequences that could come downrange.
Okay, thank you. I did want to make a final point that all the small business that I have attended, it seems like I've seen a lot of business owners and the people that work there always with their masks. And so I feel as a community, we do have business owners that really do care, do want to run a safe business. And I do believe in the power of the individual, the store owner, that we don't want people getting sick in your store. And so business owners will do the right thing. Again, that's my just 2 cents on this whole issue. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Go ahead, Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Milne. As a business owner, I know that this has been a pretty tough, a really, really challenging time for business in general, your business and the business of everyone in our city. It's unprecedented time. I remember when this started, I remember the tears in the eyes of our city manager, and I didn't quite understand at the time, where that was, it's nothing like I've ever experienced in my lifetime, or, we have not seen this in a long time, this type of pandemic, but, and so I certainly want to express my concern, for those in the business community. It's not easy. It's not anything that anyone wants. I did have a question for Councilmember Serrano. I certainly agree with a lot of the concern that you have as well. I'm curious though, is there any legal? I know as an attorney, perhaps you've thought about this, but I'm just curious what kind of legal strategy would accompany something like this, if any.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we included section 7, which is severability, which you typically see in any ordinance, which states that if any section, sentence, clause, or phrase of this ordinance should be held unconstitutional or unlawful by a court, the remainder shall remain valid. And I summarized the end of it. I think that's one of the savings clauses that a court could ultimately deem some of this in violation. The court could rule against certain components and leave the rest hanging. To the question that I think your question is very parallel track to Mr. Milne's, which is there potential liability on the city? To the city attorney's point, I've looked at it briefly. I think there's a case that could be made potentially both ways where we could be held liable, and there's certainly defenses to any claim. So I do think that the city could have some potential legal liability. There were certain things that I intentionally wrote in, for example, section 5, seeking to essentially require those working on behalf of the governor to enforce who come from out of the area to enforce this order to demonstrate that they have a clean bill of health. Because the last thing we need is an enforcement mechanism to be unintentionally and as an unintended consequence bringing some type of, whether it's COVID, the flu, a cold, anything, so to demonstrate that they are a clean bill of health. So I think, I've sought my best to be protective of the city, the citizens, the business owners, and allow individuals, as I think Mr. Milne succinctly said, and some of our other commenters, to open safely. We've invested a lot of money, and I think, it's a disappointment to see it go and sit. I don't know if that answers your question well enough, Councilman Alvarado. I hope I gave some light there.
Thank you for responding. I think that there's certainly, this is a very difficult topic for sure. Our community is certainly pretty polarized with this. And I think because of that, I think it's important if we were to bring things like this, to really make sure we vet things through council. I know that this certainly threw me off having it, seen on my agenda. Typically when we have council member items that, they come through a workshop, and then we kind of figure it out. What are some paths forward? And I'm not saying I'm against, your intentions and against what you're trying to do. I think it's certainly something that needs to be well thought out, and not to say that you are not well thought out, but certainly because of the unintended consequences that you mentioned, and certainly the health consequences that are pretty real, I think this is something we have to tread very carefully on, and instead of bringing it to a vote tonight. And my fear is that a lot of folks are tuned in today. We're probably under the impression that we're going to make a vote about this today, and so I think that's perhaps what some of the media perhaps would have. Some folks understood that's today what we're doing, and so if we were to consider something like this, I really think we need to be methodical and really think about the consequences of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. Anyone else?
There we go. This is Councilmember Maloney. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Maloney. Councilmember Maloney, go ahead.
That's the problem with having a headset and a mute button. Sometimes they both get touched, and goodness gracious. Anyways, technology issues. We'll be glad for us to figure out how to be safely back in the chambers. So I do have a number of comments here, and I want to start with saying that this is very personally affected me from when you want to talk about the topic of business. I was slated to the building I was about to lease space from for a business I was starting was set to break ground the week that the governor put the construction moratorium in place. So in March, the week that that groundbreaking was supposed to happen, my project, my hopes were put on hold. I'm fortunate in many ways because if that project had moved forward and I'd been opening, this would have been a difficult time, right? I mean, we all understand that, and I certainly do. But there's people I was going to hire who've had to get new jobs, and of course my own personal hopes and dreams have been a little bit delayed. And fortunately, I've been able to take a bit of a detour that is allowed, actually because of some of the changes that have been made. There are things and business opportunities that were not possible pre-pandemic that are now possible now because of changes in the way that various state agencies and federal agencies are approaching a number of things. So there's always a mixed bag and opportunities for people to innovate their businesses as well. Sorry, I was pulling up my notes here. My apologies. I guess one of the things that I wanted to mention as well is that I'm really grateful that I have not lost any family members. I've been lucky enough and in a place of enough privilege that I get to work from home. Many of my friends get to work from home. My family members can stay home, but there are many in the community that are not able to. And this is a sort of illness that has been disproportionately affecting our Latino community. We're seeing that there are the death rate for Latinos is 2 to 3 times the average, and that's something that we need to keep in mind as we have these conversations: is who is dying from this. And so, yes, we need to care about businesses, and I very much do, both as a business owner myself and someone who spends a lot of his money at small businesses and donating to small businesses and frequenting them. So there's a lot going on there and a lot to unpack when we start talking about what exactly this means. And really, my heart goes out to all the folks that have members of their family or their friends that have died in our community. Hundreds of people have passed away from this virus in the last year in just our community alone, and so many people across the country. So always when we're framing up these conversations, we do need to keep in mind the personal toll this has taken on people. So one of the other things I want to talk about is who was consulted as part of this, as putting together this ordinance, and more importantly, who wasn't. So I've talked to the Hispanic Chamber. They haven't had this discussed with them. I've talked with Consejo Latino, who has previously indicated that they were interested in the Pasco PD enforcing the mask mandates this last summer and fall, and which we chose not to direct our PD to do so. The Latino Business Alliance has previously advocated for increased enforcement of the previous orders as well. In addition, Councilmember Milne, Councilmember Alvarado, and I have been to dozens, I think over 20 businesses in the downtown region, personally visiting these businesses. And what we heard from them, by and large, wasn't let's ignore the governor's order. What we heard was, we need help. How can the city relieve our burdens as best as possible to allow us to be successful? People were grateful for the business assistance, and it's something that we need to continue to advocate for more of. So there's when we're talking about in this ordinance, all the whereases are talking about the disproportionate effect of small minority business owners, who we only heard from, I believe, one of them this evening. The dozens that I have heard from, and the Chamber of Commerce that specifically represents the Hispanic community within the Tri-Cities. This is not their position, and this is not something that they weighed in on. So again, when we're talking about and we're drafting these, we need to be careful as to include the community at which is affected. We already heard from the chair of the IDEC, who was also excluded from this conversation. We're talking about equity, we're talking about disparate impact, and we're not asking the people who are affected whether or not they support this. And by and large, the communities I've talked to do not support this ordinance. They do not believe that ignoring the mandates from the governor are the right direction for the city to go. And so we've seen a number of emails. I've had personal conversations, and we've talked and visited again over 20 businesses over the course of the last year. And we're just this I believe is well intentioned. And Mr. Serrano, please don't take this as any attack on your intent. But when we talk about who was at the table, the people who we're claiming to be protecting were not at the table. So the other thing I really want to tackle is I've done this before and I'm going to do it again. I'm going to recite the oath of office. So I, Craig Maloney, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America and the Constitution and laws of the state of Washington and all local ordinances, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of the office of Council Member of District 6 for the City of Pasco according to law to the best of my ability. So why I want to recite that is because there's no caveat in there that allows us to pick or choose between which laws we follow and which Constitution and we follow. And it does not give us the flexibility to say we would like to ignore certain state laws, regardless of whether we disagree with them. And believe me, I've said it before, I do not agree that all the emergency order that the governor has put in place is going to keep us safe. I don't believe that there's a lot of benefit in sitting outdoors with covers and walls. I don't think that's really keeping us safer. Nonetheless, there's nothing in my oath of office, which my fellow council members also took, that says that we get to pick and choose which laws we follow. Until a court of law has overruled the governor's order and said, no, those don't apply, those are not constitutional because of the disparate impact or because of other sources, I don't know how we can support this ordinance when it says we're going to ignore the governor's orders and we're going to pick and choose not to follow the state law. So I just at the face, I don't understand why we're even bringing this forward. We don't have a role here. This isn't, we're talking about state agencies. We don't have the ability to choose what they're going to do. And more specifically, we are going to, if we were to pass this ordinance, we would be sued by the state AG, and we would have to defend ourselves. At the moment we stopped a state agent from coming into the city of Pasco, we'd be sued, we'd be going to court, our taxpayers would be paying legal fees for something that is, I think, even at its face, very difficult to imagine would hold up in court in any way, shape, or form. So not only would we have to pay the legal fees, we'd also be potentially found liable in other ways. So not only are we talking about the small businesses and what potential liability we may have there, we also have the legal costs of just defending this very ordinance from the state. We know this AG is very litigious, and we've seen that he's sued the federal government dozens of times. And I don't think he'd think for a second about suing Pasco. Their state resources are far in excess of what we have as City of Pasco. How much do we want our taxpayers to fund to defend this? And sorry, one second, get back to my notes. And even on the face of that, we specifically have a number of people who have declared themselves sovereign citizens in the city of Pasco, and that their rules don't apply to them. Our ordinances don't apply to them. How is this different than what they're suggesting to us, where they say that they're exempt from our rules? How are we saying that we can be exempt from the state rules? Again, until a court of law, and if a court of law says that this doesn't apply to us, well, let's have that conversation. Let's talk about which ones we can, what safety means. I'm not an arbiter of safety, but what we've sworn to do is to uphold the law. And finally, when we're talking about this, I've spent an enormous amount of time and attention on this over the last couple of days. Very surprised to see it happen. Did not have any good time to prepare, so I spent good time over the weekend and an excessive amount of time today talking to the community and getting feedback on this. A month ago, less than a month ago, we unanimously passed a resolution about what our city council actions were going to be to respond to this pandemic. None of them said, let's draft and pass an ordinance that will ignore the state law. I'd like to point out that Mr. Serrano was one of the people who voted for that. It was unanimous across this council. I think we'd be much better served actually following what we've already agreed to as a city council and advocating for our community as we have already passed in a resolution, and use our efforts to actually find ways to immediately help people instead of ending up in court, instead of ending up in spaces where we actually don't help anyone, and instead we just spend taxpayer dollars in legal fees and not actually at the end of the day help anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else have any comments?
This is Councilmember Roach, and I have some comments if that's okay, if Mayor Pro Tem is not waiting to speak.
Councilwoman Roach, go ahead. I will speak after you if I'm allowed. Thank you.
Thanks. Gosh, I've been overwhelmed by emails just today from people. And there is a vocal population here in Pasco who really wants us to open up. And I think that there is a silent majority that is genuinely wanting to protect their health from this pandemic. And what I, as a council member, have heard from people who are working in the service industry, in food processing, in agriculture, about lack of protection and PPE, the harassment that they have experienced at their job. I know we heard from Mr. Grimm, and he's, I frequent his grocery store. That's where I shop. And he might be one of those good business owners to work for. But, one of the emails that I got this weekend that does not reflect that. And I'm just going to read straight from, an excerpt from it, because I feel like those words coming from the firsthand perspective are more valuable than me trying to relay my perspective. And so I'm just going to read this to you all. I know that some council members have already gotten this, but this is from a Pasco resident who does work in the service industry. And she says, every day I felt more devalued as a human being by people's refusal to do the bare minimum to keep me safe, from mask wearing to refraining from grabbing my physical person and so on, all the while hearing the majority of people say how it's ridiculous we can't come in. This is an outrage. How can you be so stupid? This is a hoax. Yes, my employer followed the mandates put in place to protect us is an outrage. It's completely outrageous that I want to be safe and not get a life-threatening virus that will put my already destroyed finances in worse shape when I can't work at all because I caught it in the process of serving your family. A birthday party or anniversary at your favorite eatery should not be more important than the life of the human being serving you. And, that's, Councilmember Serrano, you brought up Mossy Rock back in December as an example of what we could fashion our city after. And I think that, Mossy Rock is in an entirely different situation than we are. They're in a county, there's a city that has, you know, a significantly, like a fraction of the population that we do. They don't have the positive tests that we do. They don't have the hospitalization rates or even the amount of businesses that we do. And to compare the two is, I think, inappropriate. And you know, I'm just struggling because I think there's last year we, as a council, and this was unrelated to COVID, and I think that, you know, it's really apt and appropriate for Councilmember Maloney to reread that oath that we all took, because I take that seriously, and I take public health, and I value human beings' lives. And for me, that's the bottom line. And I've said this over and over again, whether it's to constituents or to the city manager or to other council members, that, you know, for me, the bottom line is protecting lives. And if somebody does not have their life, how can they pursue their business? My husband owns a business, a small business. Does not have a storefront. And when the pandemic hit, he had to lay off 2 employees. You know, that's not still the same situation as people are faced with right now. But I have an inkling of, you know, what's happening in people's lives as an employer and as, you know, employees. And so, you know, the other person that I think, as I referenced, our decision last year as council that put us in a huge legal liability. You know, there's what Councilmember Millen brought up, that there's this liability from the individual or from the business that could exist. But then there's this liability that, you know, that's far greater than that comes to the cost of the taxpayer and to the resident. And you know, I emailed legal counsel and I didn't hear anything back from them this weekend, and I'm disappointed that I didn't. But, you know, my guess is that when we did that last year, when we took that decision, the unintended consequence was that we possibly could have lost the CDBG money that we get from HUD. That's $1 million a year that goes to revitalizing downtown, that goes to local business owners, that goes to minority business owners, women-owned businesses. And that was an unintended consequence of that vote. And that had nothing to do with COVID. And so here we have the situation with the pandemic where we're on the cusp of getting this vaccine out. And we're simultaneously, you know, at this point where cases are skyrocketing. And in the month of December, we had 36 Tri-Cityans die. You know, that's more than one person a day. I don't take that lightly. I also, you know, feel an immense amount of compassion for the business owners here. But I feel like you've put us in this impossible situation. Well, we already are in an impossible situation. And, you know, I'm interested in knowing, you know, getting back to the resolution that we passed back in November, you know, what are the ways in which this council is interested in actually rolling up our sleeves and doing something, being innovative? You know, are we out there? Can we interface with our business owners in a way that we're surveying their needs and then delivering on that, even if it means that it comes at a cost to us? I'd rather pay that cost out of our budget than paying legal fees to lawyers and to the state for breaking the law. I'm not going to be in favor of breaking the law. And so I want to take this conversation to a more constructive place, is I guess what I'm saying, and to the place where we get out there and we start figuring it out. You know, I went to my brother-in-law got married in September, and I went to a nail salon in Pasco. And what I saw, the innovation that I saw that business owner created to keep me safe as a patron was incredible. And I'll try to describe it, and it's probably not going to sound great, but essentially, if you go into a nail salon, and I know most of you guys might not know about this, but there's massage chairs adjacent to one another. And what this person had done, this business owner, was they put essentially shower curtains and plexiglass between each of the different stations. So you still had visibility throughout the whole business, but you could still have a conversation, and you still felt like you were connected with people and getting a service that, for me at that time was necessary. And so what are the ways that we can do this and talk about it in a, do something constructive instead of encouraging our council to, be in violation of our oath. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roach. Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, do you want to go ahead and chime in?
Absolutely, thank you. I want to start off with the numbers. I did a little bit of research after I too had several emails, calls, text messages, people reaching out. So I took it upon myself to do a little bit of research. This is what I found. Franklin County has, as of January 4th, has 222 new cases. Total 8,836 cases, and deaths 77. Benton County has 287 new cases, a total of 11,740 cases, and 156 deaths. How many of these are Hispanics? Well, not everyone reports their race. Those that have reported are 7,352. As you know, many do identify as white, so they're included in that portion of 4,720, and 7,184 did not report their race. So my concern here is that on this proposed draft, Latinos, Hispanics, minorities are pointed out. I'm pretty sure, Councilman Serrano, that you did your research and you went out and visited and spoke with some businesses. I'm interested in hearing who, so we can figure out a way to help. But I also would like to acknowledge the callers that are in support of the community, opening up the businesses. I would like to encourage the same callers to continue supporting local businesses with the necessary precautions. Please, I ask for respect for each other, and especially for the employees at the stores exposed, not only to the virus, but to the attacks on their person. My concern is that the essential workers are continually and unnecessarily exposed. Councilwoman Roach, Ruben, and Craig have expressed concerns for the minorities that were spoke of in this proposed letter. I would like to know, their feedback. I'd like to work on a way to help them, not only just giving them the CARES funds so they can stay open. What do we need to do to figure out for them to continually stay open and following the guidelines? One of the things I don't want to propose or promote is the carelessness of unmasking. I did speak to several businesses, Latino businesses, minority businesses, community leaders, to the Hispanic Chamber, to a lot of community leaders in the city of Pasco that expressed concern for this draft. And we go back to the oath. We swore that we would be speaking on behalf and staying to, following the rules, the guidelines, the laws. And so I can't honestly say that I can support this proposal without actually supporting the local businesses, with actually taking into consideration all those that are actually exposed, the meatpacking, the agricultural workers, even people at the restaurants that, they don't have insurance and have to show up to work. And what happens? They're spreading because they don't have the funds, they don't have the means to stay home and take care of themselves or quarantine. And so on behalf of all those individuals that not only because they're immunocompromised, but because they have no other way of taking care of themselves, and because again, this is against the rules. So I would encourage you, Councilman Pete Serrano, if you would like to continue, I would actually suggest that you pursue a lawsuit directly with the governor's office. I don't think the city of Pasco should be exposed to any of the repercussions if we follow this suit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. And as I'm listening here tonight, my emotions and thoughts go wild, but I'm going to just make an attempt to be brief in my response and my comments, because I feel somewhat responsible to take some responsibility in what's going on here. Not that it's my fault the pandemic is here, but I'm just one of 7 council members. But what I want to share with you tonight is, ever since this pandemic started, I'll start with this. I've been doing, and I say the whole council has been working so hard to try to work with our state government to come up with ways that we can make this as safe a community as possible, but at the same time trying to protect our constituents and especially our small businesses. We all know they're taking the biggest hit in this whole deal. And behind every decision that we make with COVID, there's no longer an exclamation point. It's always a question mark. Regardless of which way you go and which way you think is the best way, it always ends with a question mark. And then it's up to us as a council to try to guide our city to help as much as possible to keep them afloat and to do what's best in all aspects, in business and health first, and just make this a thriving community. Ever since this pandemic started, we've been working tirelessly to try to work with our state government to give us a seat at the table before they make decisions. And unfortunately, that's where I think our communities here in Pasco and in the Tri-Cities have had to pay a price for the governor making decisions based on his constituents and the majority of the population. And then we're having to pay a price as we're stuck in phase 1 for a long time, as even though our numbers were better than other counties, we just seem to be getting the short end of the stick all the time. But we have been working tirelessly to work with them to try to make it work and coming up with ideas, and in many instances, we made progress. We got to open up. We changed our ordinances to allow for outdoor, eating in the beginning. Gosh, we've done a lot of things to try to make this work for everybody, and this just seems to never be enough. And I know for many people, their dreams have been shattered. And then again, anything I say can be argued against, because everybody should have the right to make their own decisions to go out to a place they want to go to and take the risks that they feel are necessary. And then those that don't want to go have the right to stay home. No matter what you say, there's always something that could be argued against. What you think is the right thing for you and your family and or your community. But unfortunately, I have sat at the table with many hours with the representatives. We have not only our co-op meetings, but the municipal, our MAC meetings, in which all of the leaders from the Tri-Cities are trying to get together. And we've basically demanded to have a seat at the table before these decisions are made, and to at least let us evaluate at a local level what our emergencies are and how we can deal with our community so that we don't have to pay a price that really was made for, you know, people with or areas with a higher rate of these infections. So it's really hard to make these decisions, and I'm not tired to the point where I'm not fighting anymore. I'm still fighting. Every day I think about everything that's going on and communicating with our representatives, and then it comes down to, unfortunately, it's who we have elected to be in those positions. And in this case, you know, I respect what Councilmember Serrano is trying to do, because he's doing something. He's trying to do something. And again, as Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, well, let's find those somethings, and maybe we need to do more work and look, you know, bringing it to the table and helping these people in a different way. But the problem that I'm seeing here is that regardless of what we come up with here as an ordinance for a city, it's not the city that our constituents are fighting with. It's with the laws that have been imposed on us by our state government. And I just, at this point, I don't know what to do, because as much as I want to help, I can't feel like I can take the responsibility of encouraging somebody to defy the governor's orders, and then they come to us and said, you said we could do this, and we have no way to defend them. Then what happens? And that's the problem I'm struggling with. And many people would say, well, you just got to man up. You just got to, you know, do it and see what happens. But it's not that simple when you're thinking about a community as a whole, because there is people's lives at stake. And not everybody is responsible to do the things they're supposed to do, or otherwise we may not even have to be in this situation. So it is a very difficult thing, and I'm not tired of fighting. I know the council members, regardless of what comes up with this decision, are going to continue to work with our state government, to try to make them understand, because I've heard the community cry out, there is no fairness in this. I totally get what they were saying tonight. How is it okay to do one thing and not another? And why am I being penalized for this? The same way we were feeling when we were in stage 1 and phase 1 and other counties were in phase 2. It's just not fair. And I wish the governor would give us more of the attention that we deserve here in the Tri-Cities. And we're working on that. We're working with him, and that's the only way I know how, as a leader of this community, is to just keep fighting and keep helping and coming up with innovative solutions to see how it is that we can move forward. It's really easy for me to say that, you know, I was very disappointed when he extended these orders from the January 4th to January 11th. But before we can move forward with what, in my opinion, with what Councilmember Serrano is proposing, is we have to work with our commissions and our leaders. I got multiple phone calls today, and it was surprising to see that some of the leaders of our business communities were saying that they weren't in favor of defying the governor's orders. The last thing they want to do is something that's not legal or not right. The last thing they want to do is spend time in wasting their time in the court. So it's very difficult to be able to respond to our community. All I can offer is to keep fighting, to express to our state senators or state government that we can do it safely, just as we can open up this council here in the near future to ensure that we are doing things as safe as possible, because it just doesn't make sense that you can walk into Lowe's and be 2 feet from somebody, and you can't do that in other places. It's just not right. So with that said, those are my thoughts. I'm going to do everything I can to keep fighting, to figure out ways to safely open up our communities. I know our small businesses are suffering. Trust me, I'm one of them. But all we can do is keep fighting. And I just, again, before I can continue down this road that Councilmember Serrano is looking to do, and I totally respect because he's opening the door for these discussions. And I totally respect what he's doing, but we need to have more community input and support from our constituents. Unfortunately, I don't know if we'll be working for nothing if we get to open up next week. We just don't know what's going to happen. So with that said, I just want to just keep telling the council, let's just keep fighting and let's keep doing what's right. And if this doesn't work out, Mr. Serrano, let's figure out a way to make it work for those that need help. For those small businesses that need help, please help us. Give us ideas on what we can do, and trying to help our state government to do what's right for everyone. So with that said, those are my thoughts. I'll go ahead, and if you would like Mr. Serrano to say something else, I just don't see right now, as I was taking some notes here, that we're seeing somewhat divided. I think there's more of the council that's not ready to move forward unless we have some more answers and involve more of our committees and groups to make sure we're on the same page. And then again, we're fighting against time here too. So anything you want to say before we move on, Mr. Serrano?
Yeah, Mayor, I really appreciate you allowing me to kind of wrap this up. I think I'm going to echo some of your sentiments here. As of, I believe, last Friday, this became a public document. It is now in each one of the council members' hands, as well as the general public. I recognize it's not moving forward as is, but what we need to do, as you said, is continue to fight. For council to look at this and dismiss it because of legal liabilities and not move forward with something better, it would be a disservice to our residents, to our constituents. So for the 7 of us, we need to improve this. We have an obligation to do so. For those community members, whether you want to reopen, close, whatever your position is, look it up. Let's bleed it to death. Let's write this thing up. I mean, I'm sure anyone else that spends time writing for a living knows that draft 1 is not the end game. I started this conversation and I took shots from each one of you, and that's fine. But show the support to your community members and make this better. If we don't do this, we have failed them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. And I appreciate your
Mr.
words.
Mayor, if I can respond to that last bit there, I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
Mr. Serrano, I think suggesting that this is our only avenue forward to help our community succeed and be better is inaccurate. A month ago, you voted for a resolution where we laid out 6 different items, none of which included this ordinance in it. Those items you voted for, you thought could help our community succeed and do as best it can to survive this pandemic. As I said, and as the other council member said, those also provide us avenues to spend our energy to better this community and help our small businesses and our community members. So please, don't create the false dichotomy of it's your way or there's no way at all. And instead, embrace the fact that there is multiple options that we can go forward here, including the conversations with our community and our Latino businesses who might have a different approach that they would like to proceed.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. I, for the record, didn't take it that way, Mr. Maloney, but I think the way I heard it was, this is what I got. Let's see if we can come up with something better if this is not going to work. And I'm challenged to do that. Again, like I said, I'm going to continue working with our state legislators and our state government to make things work because I can't. And I think I think it's safe to say that most of our constituents don't want to do something that's illegal or going to hurt somebody in some way. They want to do it by the rules, and our job is to go make those rules happen. So with that, I guess City Manager Dave Zabel, do you have any other suggestions for the council?
Well, it doesn't appear there's a majority that wants to move this forward at this point in time. So I think, it seems like our focus ought to be on the resolution council previously passed. And then if folks want to work on this as Councilmember Serrano said, to try to improve it. And I guess that's up to them to do. And at some point in time, council can consider that.
Okay.
Those revisions.
Thank you, Mr. Zip. So with that, I think, Councilmember Serrano, that the majority is of the thought that they don't want to move forward on this, but it doesn't stop, like you said, the first draft doesn't mean that's the end of it. So you can continue to improve on it and see if maybe it can go a different direction. But for now, I appreciate you bringing this up and bringing the discussion up, and appreciate, again, the public comments that were expressed here tonight. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and move on to item number 12 on our agenda, which is the executive session. Do we have a need for the executive session tonight?
Not this evening.
Not this evening. Thank you. So with that, thank you, City of Pasco. Thank you, Council, for having to make these hard decisions and moving forward and fighting for our community. So with that, it is 9:20, and this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.